Hi, and thank you for joining me. So excited to be here talking to you about the 3 manifesting secrets to creating your ideal life with the Akashic Records. So I'm going to be talking about the Akashic Records if you're not familiar with what the Akashic Records are. And I'm also going to be talking about those 3 keys or those 3 secrets to manifestation. So my name is Jamie Santo and I'm a spiritual techpreneur. And so what I do is I talk about different spiritual tools that you can use to create awareness, to create healing, and to take action so that you can create the life that you want. So today I'm going to be talking about a very specific tool, which is the Akashic Records, and talking about those 3 keys to manifestation using the Akashic Records. So usually when you come to a presentation like this, you're going to have the person presenting really giving you 5 or 10 minutes of their own story. And so I don't want to waste your time. So I don't want to do that. And now I welcome you to go and look at some other videos that I've posted on my Facebook page, on my website, or on my channel, that you can hear more about my story if you're interested in that. So you can see where my perspective comes from and the different modalities that I'm using to talk about the Akashic Records or the different programs that I create. But I'm not going to focus on that here because I do value your time. I'm going to kind of be skipping that and inviting you to go see that in other places because it is available. So I want to jump in directly to talking about the Akashic Records and those 3 keys. So when we are talking about manifestation, we're really talking about creating our own reality. So we want to, first of all, understand that we are always creating. So anything that you do, you are going to be creating your reality. So we don't wait until it manifests. In fact, we are always manifesting it. So really understanding how is it that we are manifesting the current circumstances that we are experiencing, that is very important. So that is where these keys come in to really help us think through what is it that we're already creating, because we're taking action and creating what we are currently experiencing. And if that experience is not something that we want to experience, if that's not really what we want to be experiencing, we want to be manifesting other things, then we have to think about, well, how do we shift that? What is the process that we can use to make that transformation, and to not just make that transformation for one thing that you manifest, but to really make the transformation for all the different life areas that you experience and all the different things that you manifest. So for day-to-day experience. So it's not just about the big things, it's about everything. So the keys that I'm going to be presenting today are really focused on the Akashic Records and how the Akashic Records can help us really with that transformation. So if you haven't heard about the Akashic Records before, let me go ahead and go through those with you. And so different people really have a different concept of the Akashic Records, and some of them have a really narrow concept of it, and some people have a broader concept. So let me just break it down for you. When we talk about the Akashic Records, what is it that we are talking about? So so we can think about different levels of understanding. So first there's the Akasha or the Akashic. So you can think of that kind of like a spiritual landscape where everything is available. So that's one level. And then we can think about the Akashic Library. So that is like the energetic superhighway of spiritual information. That's where everything is written about life or things that exist. So all of that knowledge is available in the Akashic Library. Now within the Akashic Library, there are Akashic Records. And so the Akashic Records are those records of certain things. So let's say there's a record of a star, a record of a planet, there's a record of a soul. So what we're interested in is really talking about and focusing on the record of our soul. So a lot of times when people are talking about the Akashic Records, they're talking about soul records. And so when we go in and when we get information or we connect and bring back information from the Akashic Records, then it's that soul level information that we're talking about. And so that soul record is in the Akashic Library, right? And then the Akashic Library exists in the Akasha or the Akashics, that bigger landscape. So we're going to be talking specifically about information that we can get from your soul record. And that's how you make transformation and how you can achieve transformation in a way that is less painful, that is really easier, where you can reach and achieve alignment in a way that you may not have been able to before, because you were kind of doing it in a very kind of testing things out in a trial and error, maybe using what other people have been teaching you so that you can arrive at your own information. But that information is already available for you. You don't have to hunt it down. You just have to know where to go look for it. So that's when I say that we are going to be working with how we can use the Akashic Records to really create this type of transformation, and how we can use those three keys using the Akashic Records. I'm talking about your records, right? So your individual records, how would we be able to access them? And then how can we use them to be able to kind of jumpstart or supercharge our manifesting process, so it's a lot easier to understand and to integrate in our day-to-day experience. So that is the Akashic Record. So now your soul record has a record. So if you think of your Akashic Record, has a record of your divine nature. So that means that your original divine nature, that information is available to us in our soul record. So rather than trying trial and error, figuring out what that is, what our soul purpose is, what we're here to do, and all of that information is in your Akashic Record. And so really being able to access that is such a powerful thing. So when we think about when we were first created by divine source, so whether you want to think of the universe or you want to think about God, however you name that divine source, when we were first created, we had this divine blueprint that came into existence. Now, when you think about, well, why did that need to happen in the first place? Well, we can think about sort of God or divine source wanting to have different, being able to have access to different types of experiences. And it was because of that that then we individuated. So that means that we oneness separated into us different souls, and there really is no separation. But to be able to get that experience, then we have to individuate so we can get different experiences. And when you or when we individuate, then we have a certain blueprint that was created when we came into existence. So now as our soul traverses that experience, then we're going to start shifting away from that blueprint. Now, how do we shift away from that blueprint? Well, we shift it by negativity. So when we think about negativity, I like to think of negativity as negating our divinity. And so how do we do that? How do we negate our divinity? And that's how we start having this separation. And it can happen through different lifetimes. So when we are negating our divinity, what we're really doing is we're taking action that's not aligned to our original divine blueprint. So when we are not aligning to that blueprint, then that in itself is negative action, because we are in a sense being someone else than who we were originally created to be. So when we think about, well, what is it that we're currently manifesting? If we are currently manifesting a reality that is not too pleasant or that we really don't like, well, we have to think about where is it that we're misaligned to that original blueprint. And so that's the information that we can get from the record. So we can get information about the blueprint so that then we can more fully be able to work on aligning ourselves and then also clearing past negativity. So when we think about, well, our current reality, how is it that I'm negating my divinity with the actions that I'm taking now? If everything seems like I'm maybe doing something for good, well, it all comes down to our cultural programming that comes from schooling, that comes from our families, that comes from just the culture around us. It may not necessarily be aligned to who we are at soul level. So you may have been taught something by your family that isn't necessarily, if you express yourself in that way, then in a sense you are negating your divine blueprint. And so it's really important to understand that. There's also belief systems that we inherit from our families, from our culture about who we are. So for example, if you're a woman in a Western culture, what we've been programmed to believe about what's possible, what we can do, what's available. Of course, in the 21st century, it's very different than it was, let's say, 2 centuries ago. But even then, there's still a lot of programming that we need to become aware of and clear. So when we're talking about negating our divinity, that's what we're talking about, is what actions are we taking that really is a reflection of somebody else's beliefs versus a reflection of our divine nature. And so that's where negativity comes from. So it's not necessarily that you're doing something bad, but that you're doing something that is going against your divine blueprint. So of course, then the first step is to find out what is that divine blueprint. So you can also think of it as being misaligned in terms of your vibrational state. So right now, especially in the spiritual community, we talk about vibration, right? And you want to be aligned vibrationally to what you want to be attracting. And that, of course, is true. So how do our actions, when we're working really hard at them, how can they be misaligned? How can that be affecting our vibration in a negative way? Well, and it may not be necessarily that we are doing something bad again, right? I'm putting bad in quotation marks, but that what we are doing is not aligned to our divine nature. So we're going maybe against our nature. And because we're going against our nature, then that vibration is not as high as it could be. So then that means that then that affects our vibrational rate, and we may not completely align to something we want to be calling in or manifesting. So that is very important. So another thing to consider is that anytime we make a choice, there's going to be a result or a consequence that is a result of that choice. And that's where karma comes in. So if you want to think about karma and then how the Akashic Records really help us to understand karma. Well, karma isn't necessarily that you did something bad and now you're being punished for it, but you've taken certain actions, and as a result of those actions, now there are certain consequences that you are experiencing, and that's your current reality. So if you are negating your divinity through your actions, then that in itself we experience as kind of a negative karma. And again, it's not so much because we're doing something on purpose that's negative, but because we're not fully aligned to what our divine blueprint is, or we're not fully aligned to our divine nature. So it's really important to get that understanding of karma, not so much as punishment, but kind of as a feedback loop. So if we do something that's not aligned and we're experiencing something that we don't like, then we need to use that as feedback so that then we can change our actions. And we need to, so rather than just going by trial and error and experimentation for you to see, well, okay, so I'm getting this feedback loop. I understand that karma, that I'm getting this karma, or I'm getting these results, these consequences because I'm not fully aligned. So what do I do? Well, when you understand the information from your Akashic Records or from your divine blueprint, then you know what to align to. Then you're able to make that alignment in a much quicker pace. And you really can be done with a lot of experimentation or feeling like you're kind of groping in the dark and just trying to figure things out. So that is going to be very important that you're able to do that. So now since I've spent all this time kind of talking about the Akashic Records, let me break down the 3 keys for you. So once we are able to access the Akashic Records, that means that we can get information about your divine blueprint, at who you are at soul level. So we can look at what are your soul gifts. And so it's those soul gifts, it's those qualities that are available in the Akashic Records that then give us clues as to, and very concrete clues, very actionable clues as to how we can better align to those qualities. So versus trying to be, so for example, for me, instead of me wanting to be an architect, for example, then I know that that's not really in alignment to my qualities, to my soul gifts. So my soul gifts, I'm really a teacher. And so that is knowing that I'm a teacher, that I am here to spread the message, to help other people understand their own information and to spread their own message, then that has allowed me to more fully align and to know when certain actions are aligned and when certain actions are not, so that I can stop wasting my time going for things that maybe somebody else told me I was good at, or that my family wanted me to pursue. So having that soul level information is the first key. That is what is critical. Now, when we are getting this information, that means that we're connecting to the 5th dimension or to the spiritual realm of information. That's where the Akashic Records kind of exist. And so because there's no time and space in the records, that means that we can go back and get information about our original creation, our original blueprint, because that information is available to us. So when we really understand this concept that each one of us has this divine essence, and really it's this experimentation, this when we go through life and we are experimenting and we're trying out different things, and certain things feel good and certain things don't feel good. Basically what we're doing is we're tapping into our divine essence. We're tapping into that blueprint, that original blueprint, because let's say teaching may feel really good to me, but it may not feel really good to someone else. So if I am trying to lead someone and say, well, you should be like I am, that may completely not resonate with them, because that's not who they are at soul level. That's not what their soul essence is about. So really helping to discover what that soul essence is so critical, because then you know when you are faced with choices, or when you're faced with decisions, when you're faced with evaluating different actions that you want to take, you can always come back to that soul level information and be able to make a decision that is more in alignment to who you are rather than, for example, who I am. So I can use that information for myself. And as an Akashic Records practitioner, I can go into the records and bring back that information for you. So versus you having to learn how to tap into the Akashic Records and really trust the information, which can take years of study, you can work with a practitioner who can kind of jumpstart that process for you. So that you can start using this information. And this information is not anything that's going to change. So that once you have this information about who you are at soul level, that's information that you can use for the rest of your life in all different areas of your life. So it's a very actionable, it's something that really becomes very concrete, even though it's at the fifth dimension and it's very spiritual type information. Once we bring it down to the third dimension, once we start talking about it and once you start implementing it, it's really very actionable information that you can use in your day-to-day experience. So that really is the first key, is knowing who you are at soul level, knowing what your soul blueprint is. So that is key number one. So that's really the first secret on how we can use the Akashic Records to really start creating a life that we love, that we are engaged with every day, where we love waking up in the morning and we feel fulfilled every time when we go to bed at night. So the second key is the Akashic Records can help us with soul level healing. So that is the second key. So a lot of times when we bring back Akashic record information, it may feel like it's not correct. It may feel like maybe like it may be difficult to implement, or it's not really what we learned and what we've been programmed with. So with that, once we bring back that information, it's a lot easier to do that soul level healing and to start kind of stripping away those negative choices that you have done in the past, or that you have chosen in the past, that you have these negative actions that you have taken in the past. So when we have been negating our divinity, we can sort of start clearing those episodes of negativity, or those episodes when we did that negation. And so it's very important to understand, once we know what our soul level blueprint is, then we can start seeing where we are incongruent, where we take action that doesn't align to who we are at soul level, where we may be either overcompensating for certain qualities that we may not be really fully owning, or really not even recognizing that they were part of us. Or we may be trying to be someone else. We may be trying to be someone other than we are, because that's how we've been programmed to believe with our upbringing and our family and our schooling and our education. All of that really sometimes, however well-meaning those individuals may have been who gave us that education or who brought us up with those beliefs, then still, because they didn't really understand the whole concept of each one of us having a soul blueprint, or having the soul essence that we all need to really be congruent with and be really resonant with, then that means that we've been creating all this negativity. So the second key is that we can, in the soul records, find out what some of those negative choices have been. Because if you've already done them in the past, and that means that they're available in your record, and you can go back and find out what those are, and then you can clear them. You can clear them so it can be easier as you start working on being congruent with who you are at soul level. Then it can be easier, and it doesn't feel like hard work. So when you find out this information, but you don't do the work of clearing, then it may feel like you're doing a lot of hard work, because there's all of this gunk that's kind of in the way. So we want to make sure that you are clearing as much of this as possible. So when we work together, for example, and I go and get information about your Akashic Records, then one of the things that I also do is I look at what is currently getting in the way for you to really live who you are at your divine essence. And so we normally call those blocks, we call those restrictions, and so they can be multiple things. And so what I do also as part of my work and as part of going into the Akashic Records is finding out what those are. What are those blocks? What are those restrictions that are really getting in the way and that are most stopping you from creating the results that you want, from creating the results that are really congruent with who you are at soul level. So that Akashic Record level healing is very important, is very critical. So there's certain protocols and certain clearing practices that I do as part of my work that you can benefit from. So you can do that soul level clearing. So that soul level healing is very important. So that's key number 2. And that secret number 2 is that you don't have to do all of that healing here in the third dimension. You can go into your Akashic Records and you can heal at that level. So you can go into the Akashic Records, get the information about your blocks and restrictions, and then heal those in the Akashic Records. So that is powerful healing that happens in the records. And of course, we are not going to heal everything that because you may have lifetimes of negative choices, but we can clear what is most getting in the way right now so that you can start getting some momentum and so you can start getting some movement in the direction that you want. So now let's move on to key number 3. So the third key, so once you know who you are at soul level, which is the first key, and then once you clear a lot of the blocks and restrictions that have been created by negative choices that you've made in the past, then the third key is for you to start taking congruent action. Now, remember that congruent action means that you are not negating your divinity. That means that you're taking action that is directly aligned with who you are at soul level. So having that soul level information, knowing who you are at soul level, knowing about your essence at soul level, knowing about your blueprint, all of that gives you very tangible information so that you can start taking action, so you can start making choices that are aligned to your blueprint. So really understanding where we are incongruent so we can stop doing those things, because if we continue doing things that are incongruent, then that means that it's not that we are continuing to negate our divinity, and again we're making negative choices. But first we have to know what those negative choices are so that then we can start making different choices that align more with our blueprint. So once we have that information, then we can do some healing, and then we can start taking congruent action. And that is really critical, and being able to take that congruent action is so important. So those basically are the 3 keys that knowing this information from the Akashic Records is very powerful. Now, of course, you can do this yourself and work with the Akashic Records. But if you have somebody who is a practitioner and knows how to go in and get that specific information, that is going to be helpful for you. If you have somebody who is proficient and really gifted in being able to do that clearing and not just find the blocks and restrictions, but do the clearing for you so that then it's easier for you to take that congruent action. And then having somebody who can guide you and remind you about what congruent action looks like. what should you do in this situation? So all of that is very important. So if I think about, for example, my own experience with in this particular journey, having learned about the Akashic Records and having that information was really powerful. And then learning the different modalities, the healing modalities, to be able to clear the blocks and restrictions, that was even more powerful. And also my experience with coaching and as a teacher, being able to hold space and guide you in terms of how you integrate this information, because it's not going to be integrated from one day to another. It starts slowly with small actions, and then of course you start getting that feedback, that positive feedback. Things become easier. You start seeing the results that you want. If you've been feeling fear or resistance, then that goes away and things are much easier. Things seem to flow more. All of that is part of knowing the information from your records, healing any blocks and restrictions that you're currently experiencing, and then of course taking congruent action with who you are at soul level, because ultimately that's what your soul wants. Your soul wants to have this experience that is aligned to your divine gifts. So the more that you are able to align to those, then the easier life is going to seem, the more joyful you are going to experience life, and things are just going to seem so much easier with this information. So I hope having these three keys and knowing what these three keys are has been valuable for you, and you can use this information as you continue your own work. I want to thank you for being here with me today and really finding out how the Akashic Records can help you take control really of your manifesting process, so that you are no longer doing a trial and error and really trying other people's manifestation methods that may not necessarily work for you, because you're different at soul level. So that means that knowing who you are at soul level is very critical. It's step number one for any manifestation that you do. So this information, of course, is information that you'll be able to use if you've already invested in other manifesting classes, because then you're able to tweak that information to more fully aligned to who you are at soul level. So that is very important. So again, my name is Jamie Santo. I am the spiritual techpreneur. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope to be working with you very soon. Bye-bye.